Hey everybody, we're back here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, powered by SDN Sports. It's our last podcast, Jay, of 2025. It's hard to believe the year has kind of flown by this way, but it's been exciting. I mean, the college football playoffs are upon us. You've got Week 18 in pro football, and we never thought we'd be talking about teams like the Chiefs and Lions and Ravens who might not make the postseason. So it's a little bit crazy the way it's been this year. But let's dive right into the college football playoffs. Let's jump into the games on New Year's Day right now. Number 5 Oregon versus number 4 Texas Tech. This is the lowest point spread of all the games that we've seen. Oregon opened up a 1-point favorite. It's up to its highest point right now at 2.5. Total 52.5 down to 51.5. What do you think about this game?
Well, we saw what Oregon did with the gift of getting to face James Madison in that first game. I think they scored on their first 5 drives. Dante Moore looked absolutely exceptional. And we kind of got what we expected out of the Oregon Ducks in that game. I think they have a big advantage here in the fact that they've been in this situation over the last several years under Dan Lanning. They actually lost in the quarterfinals last year to Ohio State. I think they were actually down 34 points in that game, ended up losing 41-21. But that's allowed now Dante Moore and this Oregon team to put that chip on their shoulder. They were in this position
Texas
last
Tech
year.
Team, all their nil money, what side of the ball do they put it on?
It's all on the defensive side of the football. And again, Jacob Rodriguez, David Bailey, Bryce Pollock. These are the standout guys for them on the defensive side of the football. They've been able to cruise this year with that dominant defense. Baron Morton on the offensive side of the football from a quarterback standpoint. Their only loss was at Arizona State, a game that he was out in. So every game that he's been in, they've been able to put up the points. Again, you said it, not a super high Texas Tech Red Raider scoring offense the way we think about them under the Patrick Mahomes or flying around days. They are a defensive program. So this is truly that offensive versus defensive game. But Oregon's done it for so many years. We've seen it, Dan Lanning have the success. We haven't seen it out of the Big 12 conference of late. So we'll see what they have to offer here. Again, looking at that Big 10 versus Big 12, what the teams have done in their conferences. Again, those Big 10 teams have had a lot of success in these bowl games.
It's a little bit strange, too, because this is a little bit of kind of the Joes versus pros, where you've seen the public back Texas Tech a little bit on this. We've taken some large bets from the public on Texas Tech, but it appears that the sharp money is starting to come in on Oregon a little bit, and that's why we've seen this number creep up. Here's a couple of betting trends here, too. Texas Tech, 6-0 against the number, their last 6 games. They've gone under 8 of their last 11 games, while the total's gone over in 5 of Texas Tech's last 5 games against the Big Ten Conference. So just some things to kind of look at when you're breaking down these games. Now the 2 games that I think everybody's kind of talking about. Number 9, Alabama versus number 1, Indiana. Game opened up 6.5. It's gone up to 7. But we're seeing a little dog action now starting to show on Alabama again here. Great matchup with these 2 schools.
Yeah, one of the things here to check is check the weather. In Southern California, obviously with the Rose Bowl, but there's a lot of rumors that there's going to be heavy rain in this game. Obviously, from a standpoint of running the football, that would be a big advantage to Indiana if we're talking about not being able to throw due to the rain. Which is just surprising to say that because we're talking about the Heisman Trophy winner and Fernando Mendoza.
Potential number 1 pick in the draft.
Indiana. But Indiana, I think they're averaging like 221 yards on the ground rushing versus Alabama, only about 109 yards on the ground rushing. Alabama's rushing offense is like 118th in the nation, so they've really struggled from the rushing side of the football. Kurt Cignetti has been absolutely fantastic since he's gotten to Indiana. It's a slow Eeyore type interview. It's just he just wins. Google me, I just win, and that's all Indiana has done since he's been there. Been so impressive. Obviously, they're our number 1 seed. Indiana also is going to get back their Omar Cooper, their wide receiver that they lost in the Big Ten championship game. They lost him early in the Big Ten championship game. I think he's got 11 touchdowns on the season, so a big addition back from an injury standpoint for them. But Alabama really struggled down the stretch. There was a lot of controversy that Alabama was
shouldn't
a team that shouldn't have got in. They weren't playing good football, and then they went and kind of shocked an Oklahoma team. Again, not a game that they played particularly well, really from a defense defensive standpoint, they stifled that Oklahoma offense. But Alabama's
DeBoer has had
offensive
time
games,
to prepare for this matchup.
yeah, and he, again, a coach giving these guys these times. But again, I go back to it and I say you're giving Kirk Cignetti the time to prepare, and these coaches have made the good moves. Again, I'm going to go back to SEC versus Big Ten. SEC 0-3 in bowl games so far. So the vaunted SEC, the best football conference in the country, has not been able to pick up a bowl win so far.
But that's
with
Bama
LSU,
and Georgia not playing
LSU,
yet. Yeah.
Missouri,
Right.
and Tennessee all going down
Right.
here in the early bowl games.
I think really the quarterback matchup is so intriguing. You look at these two kids that are both highly touted. We're both there for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. These two kids are really talented. I want to see which one of these guys kind of takes the ball and runs with it, no pun intended, but leads. The total, even though the weather's supposed to be bad, hasn't dropped that much. Open 48.5, it now sits at 45. I'll give you a couple of stats here. Bama's gone over four of their last 5 games against a Big Ten, against the Big Ten conference, and Indiana is only 3-11 straight up in their last 14 games against an opponent from the SEC. So,
well, if you're an Alabama fan, if you're backing Alabama in this game, you said Ty Simpson is becoming the guy that he needs to play an absolutely fantastic game. Jeremy Bernard, the local kid here, played at Liberty, obviously one of his big targets from a wide receiver standpoint. But Alabama has not been able to run the football. It's going to be on Ty Simpson's, whether it's his legs that he's able to move the football or his arm. But this game is going to come down to Ty Simpson having a big game if you're an Alabama fan.
And there's a real chance, though, as you alluded to earlier, that it could be a torrential downpour during this game. So what team's able to kind of adapt and step up under those conditions and really play a good game? The last game, I know this game's kind of near and dear to you, so I'll let you talk about it a little bit more. That's the Georgia-Ole Miss game. Georgia opened 6.5 in this game, got as high as 7. We did see some sharp action come in, came right back down to 6.5. It's a rematch from a game late in the season. In that game, Georgia won 43-35, but outscored Ole Miss 17-0 in the fourth quarter to get that win. We know the story about Lane Kiffin, and the team's kind of that circle the wagons mentality. They want to prove something. They've got that chip on their shoulder. It's us against the world. They're playing a very tough Georgia Bulldog team.
Yeah, you kind of set the table there with the previous earlier game this season. A year ago, Georgia came into Ole Miss. First time I got a chance to go back to an SEC football game, got to see Ole Miss knock off Georgia in a rainstorm in Oxford. They go to Athens this year. You talk about it, they have a 35-26 lead, a 9-point lead in Athens at Georgia, and then get outscored 17-0 in that fourth quarter. They were outgained in that game, 510 yards to 351 yards, and Georgia did not punt in that football game. So some of that was the fact that that Ole Miss was able to get that big lead, and Georgia was kind of chasing. But again, Trinidad Chambliss, a good game. They didn't use Lacey as much from a running back standpoint in that game. Chambliss was able to move the football through the air outside of the fourth quarter. For me, obviously the storyline of the Lane Kiffin leading, but it's the Pete Golden defense. The fact that they were not able to stop, the fact that Georgia was able to put 510 yards on this Ole Miss team. We saw them beat Tulane, but we did see early in that game Tulane able to move the football on the ground. Nate Frazier is the running back for the Georgia Bulldogs. The Ole Miss, to start anything, has to start with stopping Nate Frazier from running the football. Gunnar Stockton is not a guy over the last several weeks that Georgia was playing that they were trying to put up 275 to 300 yards on his arm. It was a Nate Frazier on the ground, and it was a Gunnar Stockton running the football on the ground. So from my standpoint, for Ole Miss to stay, and I think Ole Miss is going to score some points. I think Kirby Smart is an outstanding coach, but I do think Ole Miss has an absolutely fantastic offense that's going to be able to move the football. They've got to be able to punch it in the end zone, no settling for field goals.
But they showed in that first matchup, I mean, being up going into that fourth quarter, that they were in control of that game, and they let it get away from them.
Well, and they let it get away from them on the defensive side of the football, and that's where Pete Golden was their defensive coordinator. So now as the head coach, he's got to find a way from a defensive standpoint to stop this Georgia Bulldogs offense. It can be a bend but don't break. Maybe it's make Georgia settle for some field goals to keep them in the game, but they've got to be able to control the run game. They cannot let Nate Frazier rush for over 100 yards in this game if they want to win it.
Well, we always talk about, in football that it's always tough to beat a team that second time or that third time when they play. So Ole Miss knows what they have to do now to win that game. I'll give you a couple of kind of betting trends for this one as well. The total's gone under in 4 of Ole Miss's last 5 games. Ole Miss is just 2-5 against a number of their last 7 games against Georgia. Georgia's gone under 9 of their last 12 games. So just something to kind of think about as you look at that. I mean, I love these playoff games. I love the format. We've seen good handle on all these bowl games. We think the format might ultimately change at some point with the transfer portal and guys declaring for the next level and so much uncertainty that goes on in college football. But the playoff format with all these games has been great, and this is the round of games that I think looks phenomenal.
Yeah, and if you don't have the STN Sports app, I don't know where your head's at.
Shame
or
on you.
What you're thinking. You're giving up 24/7. You're giving up cash out. You're giving up match of the day and 10% bonuses. So many reasons to get on the app. But when we talk about these games and the live in-play wagering, the match of the day, the bonuses that you can get on these playoff games, don't make the mistake. Get in today. Sign up today. Get the STN Sports app so that you've got this betting action at the touch of your fingertips. Take advantage of everything that we're giving, especially the 10% bonuses. We're giving you a boost. We're giving you a 10% odds boost on several of these playoff games, let alone the best matchup of the day most days. Get on the app. Take advantage of these bonuses.
So, Jay, it's week 18. It's hard to believe that the pro football season has flown by so quickly. Maybe it's because we're Bear fans. We've had a lot more fun this year watching the Bears, but it just seems like in a blink of an eye, it went like that. We were talking about fantasy football, it seemed like yesterday, some of the guys that we loved and who to target, and now we're heading into week 18. And I think when you look at week 18, it's difficult for both sides of the counter. It's difficult for you guys, and it's difficult for us because there's so much uncertainty. It's a little preseason-esque, and you've already seen kind of teams like the Packers. We're going to rest everybody because we can't move up from the 7 seed. It's coming out now. The Eagles, they could be the 2 seed or the 3 seed, but that's not as important as resting some of their players. We've seen that number come down a lot. So I think it's really important for everybody. I know that we're tuned into it, and I know you guys are as well, looking at social media, reading all that information that's out there, because there's a lot that's going to change between now and the kickoff on Saturday or Sundays in these games because there's so much uncertainty and guys that are just not going to play.
Yeah, and just going back a little bit, you talk about being in week 18 and kind of what we're presented with the NFL, and I'm just in shock as we sit here today that we're talking about the New England Patriots and the Denver Broncos, challenging for the number 1 seed.
And what about a team in the NFC?
The Bears winning the division, and we have the Niners and San Francisco playing for the number 1 seed,
right.
And we're talking about the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs not participating in this year's playoffs, and Phillip Rivers, coming back. I mean, the storylines around the NFL this year are so surprising. The Jacksonville Jaguars, coming up.
And there's a chance, we're going to talk about the game, but there's a chance that the Ravens don't make the postseason either. And I think when we sat here before the season started and we talked about what are the kind of maybe 5 to 6 teams that you think are definitely going to be in the hunt, we both had Detroit, Kansas City, and Baltimore right there, and all 3 might be sitting on the couch in January.
Yeah, just a new fresh faces and seeing some new teams, and on the great side of seeing these teams that are winning and performing well, it's also been kind of a yucky year in seeing so many teams that are being so bad, including our Las Vegas Raiders, the New York Giants, the New York Jets, the Tennessee Titans. I mean, we just have so many teams that are at that bottom. The Arizona Cardinals. So there's a bunch of teams winning, a bunch of teams losing, and as I go in and we talk specifically about the top of the NFC, and we talk about that Seattle Seahawks, and we talk about the San Francisco 49ers, talk about the LA Rams, who are our Super Bowl favorite as we sit today. One of the gifts of the season for those kind of 3 teams that sit with those great records at the top of the NFC was the fact that they got to play the AFC South and the NFC South in their schedules that kind of
and fourth place schedules.
Yeah, and the San Francisco plays the Giants, Cleveland, and Chicago on top of the AFC South, the NFC South. Seattle got to play Washington, Pittsburgh, and Minnesota on top of the NFC South. And so New England, another common thing in New England having a great record. They also play the NFC South in their non-conference schedule. Got games against the Titans, the Raiders, and the Giants. And so these schedule gifts of being a low-performing team last year that give you the ability to make this quick change and get to the top of the division. Now, again, taking nothing away from those teams,
right.
But it's going to be interesting.
Who's in front of you, and
it's going to be interesting as we get to this playoff round, and you're going to see some interesting things where even as we sit here in a Week 18, where we have the Seattle Seahawks playing at the San Francisco 49ers, and we're talking about these two teams being the number 1 seed in the NFC, and Seattle's a road favorite at San Francisco. And so that kind of speaks to the path that San Francisco's had. And again, they're playing without Warner on the defensive on the defensive side of things. We saw them have Brock Purdy's been absolutely unbelievable. I think he had 5 touchdowns against the Colts and another 5 touchdowns against the Bears, or 4 touchdowns against the Bears. So they've been doing great things on the offensive side of the football, but on the defensive side of the football, they're missing some parts there, allowing teams to move up and down the field. And so that's why I think we see them only as that 1.5 point dog at home against the Seahawks team.
I know when you look at coaches of the year, you look at Cohen and Grable and Johnson, but you think of the job that Shanahan did with all the injuries. You look at Baltimore, and they had the injuries, and they're in a bad spot right now. They might not make the playoffs. But you look at the 49ers, and it really was next man up. Whoever it was, Shanahan was able to get those guys to play really, really well. And I think he's done an outstanding job. I think also when you look at these teams that made the playoffs this year, go back 2 years. You think about that draft class. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Bo Nix. 3 of those 4 guys are in the postseason this year and are having phenomenal years. Jaden Daniels was the Rookie of the Year last year, won a playoff game in Detroit. I know he's been banged up this year, but we know it's not an exact science when you draft a lot of these young quarterbacks. But man, those 4 teams hit a home run. They got it right with those 4 guys. And I think when you look at the Bears, the Patriots, the Broncos, they really, really have, and the Commanders have a bright future with the young quarterbacks.
I think the league's in great shape. I complain on a weekly basis about some of the penalty calls. I think there's a real inconsistency throughout the league on the pass interference, the holding, the defensive illegal contact. Very frustrating to watch.
Are you going to say that I talked you out of wearing your yellow sweater today?
I'm just being honest. We sit here and we watch these games, and I love the league, and we depend on it. From a fans watching it, a fans betting on it. That's the industry we live in, and so there's been great competitive balance throughout the league. Again, we talked about teams at the top, teams at the bottom, but again, in any given week, we see the Atlanta Falcons knock off the Rams. I mean, we've seen the upsets this year. Anything can happen.
The Browns and Panthers knock off the Packers.
Yeah, the only thing that I plead for is some more consistency in the officiating, because I just feel like week after week there's a lot of questionable, whether it's pass interference, a defensive
or non-pass interference,
it's roughing the passer. It's just week after week we see these calls happen, don't happen, and there's really no consistency in it.
All right, so we've kind of broke down a little bit of kind of like this week going into week 18, but there is 3 games that really kind of jump off the page that have playoff implications or seeding for both teams. And we love it this week that we have games on Saturday, and both games on Saturday really mean something. Let's start with the early game on Saturday. It's the Panthers at the Bucks to win the NFC South with an asterisk, though, because if Atlanta had to win their last 2 games, and if all 3 teams end up tied, even if Carolina loses this game to Tampa, somehow, based on all the tiebreakers, they win the South.
Well, let's set that up and explain exactly what's happening. Carolina currently sits at 8-8. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers sit at 7-9, and the Atlanta Falcons sit at 7-9. Atlanta is out of the playoffs, have no chance to make the playoffs, so let's leave them at the bottom. We have a current head-to-head matchup between Tampa and Carolina. The winner makes the playoffs. Tampa wins, they go to the playoffs. Carolina wins, they go to the playoffs.
With the
However,
asterisk,
if the Atlanta Falcons beat the New Orleans Saints and Tampa beats Carolina, Carolina ends up 8-9, Tampa ends up 8-9, and the Falcons end up 8-9. So it's no longer a head-to-head tiebreaker between Tampa and Carolina. It's a 3-way tiebreaker between the 3 of them, and Carolina wins that tiebreaker. So Carolina's got 2 opportunities to represent the NFC as that number 4 seed: beat Tampa Bay or have Atlanta beat the New Orleans Saints.
And Atlanta is a 3.5-point favorite now against the Saints. So that's kind of like, hey, we want to finish really strong. Where Atlanta, Morris has been a little bit on the hot seat. They've been a little bit of a disappointment this year with the injury to Penix, the injury to Drake London, but Robinson's been great. Pitts has been up and down, but it's a young Falcon team that has a lot of talent as well, so they'd love to finish strong. On the other side, this Saint team with Tyler Shuck has been really good. I mean, against the number, they've played well. He's been great this year. He has the most wins for a rookie quarterback this year. They want to end on a strong note as well. So can they play the role of a spoiler in Atlanta in that game? But we've seen that number start to creep up a bit.
And it's strange that you bring up the New Orleans Saints, because if there's one team that has put Carolina in this situation, it's the New Orleans Saints, because they beat them twice.
Right.
Again, where the Saints sit in the NFC South is at the bottom, yet they're the team that is kind of keeping Carolina from already clinching this division. So very, very interesting game. And the bad thing about this game is it's kind of been the sense of two teams that don't really want to go to the playoffs. In particular, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 1-7 in their last 8 games. Their lone win is a home win against the Arizona Cardinals, yet that they find themselves with the ability to go to the playoffs. They have not been, I don't have to say it, they've not been good with the fact that they've been 1-7. They've got Mike Evans back, but Baker Mayfield has not been able to find really anything to get going. We saw Emeka Egbuka rush out of the gates in those first 7 races, and now it's hard to find him on the field. I think he gets 1 or 2 receptions a game and basically does nothing. But they have Bucky Irving, they've got White, they've got Evans, they've got Otten, they've got Baker Mayfield, making it they can have this magic of one game to find a way to win a game. The problem for the Bucs has been on the defensive side of the football. In the first 8 weeks of the season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense was 8th against the pass and 6th against the run. In week 9, they got their bye week. Since that bye week, they're 27th against the pass and 22nd against the run. Tampa can't stop anybody.
I know.
And Bryce Young, Dowdle, who's got some incentives going there. They want to get the ball to
McMillan,
who's really struggled last week against Seattle. Again, they had a chance to clinch this division last week and got beat up by the Seattle Seahawks. But we talked about where the level that the Seahawks are at compared to where Carolina's at. But this becomes a very, very interesting game because Carolina's been kind of up and coming, finding ways. They've beaten the Packers. They've beaten the Bills. They've beaten some.
They beat the Rams.
They've beaten some very good football teams, and then they lose some really questionable games that you think that they're going to win. Maybe that was they beat the Rams and the Packers. Maybe they didn't beat the Bills. It was Atlanta that beat the Bills. But Carolina, it's Tampa Bay that has just found a way to not want to be a part of this thing. It's amazing that we have a team that's 1-7 in their last 8 games and has a chance to make the playoffs.
You know, you talk about Tampa, and we talked about Detroit a little bit earlier, and what does Tampa and Detroit kind of have in common? And Tampa's 0-8 against the number of their last 8 games, to your point earlier, is that Tampa loses their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, and Detroit loses their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. And in both cases, these two teams that won their division last year really have struggled a bit offensively down the stretch.
And Liam Cohen's gone and had a great season with the Jaguars, and Ben Johnson's gone and had a great season with the Bears.
So here's some betting trends for this game. Carolina's gone under 4 of their last 5 games. They're 1-5 straight up. However, their last 6 games against Tampa. They're 5-15 straight up. Their last 20 games on the road. But as I said, Tampa 0-8 against the number of their last 8 games, and 1-7 against the number of their last 8 games straight up. And they've gone over 8 of their last 12 games against Carolina. So we'll see what Tampa team shows. Carolina's been really good with some big wins at home against some good teams. This is a road test for them where they haven't been really good. The game opened 3. It's come down to 2.5. But as Jay mentioned earlier, even somehow Carolina lost, they can still get in.
Yeah, they're big Falcons fans. I'm sure they're wholeheartedly willing to admit it, but go Falcons, and Carolina can find a way to backdoor themselves.
So that's the early game Saturday, and we have a doubleheader on Saturday, which we talked about how much we love. And the second game, though, how intriguing is this? Seattle on the road in Santa Clara against the 49ers. It's been a really crazy path for the Niners with all the injuries this year, and somehow they find their way that a win here, they could actually be at home throughout the playoffs if they were to run the table and play the Super Bowl in Santa Clara. They're a 1-point dog. They played week 1, I think, and the Niners won 17-14 in this game. But man, this is an intriguing matchup. Sam Darnold, excuse me, over the last 2 years, 60 touchdown passes. But last year, he really faltered down the stretch, did not play well in the playoffs. Now he's got a chance for redemption. He's got a great defense, 2 good running backs, a great wide receiver in JSN. He has to win a road game here in a tough environment to be the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, and I'm going to start on the San Francisco side of things, and we brought it up briefly how good they've been offensively since Brock Purdy's kind of been back. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey has been healthy throughout the year, has led to a great season for them. You sprinkle in some Jennings, some Pearsall, some Kittle.
And Kittle might be back.
Yeah, and imagine if this team had a Brandon Ayuk healthy, and he hasn't been able to get himself back on the field. But the Niners, you have to feel very, very good about what they've been able to do offensively. It's defense that they've not had a ton of success. Just in the last couple weeks, we saw the Bears really move the ball up and down the field on them. Even the Colts were able to move the ball up and down the field on them. Had a couple of turnovers that were bad that allowed San Francisco to win that game. On the flip side, Seattle, it's been all, for the most part, defense or special teams or miracles to get through some of these games. And I'm going back to a couple weeks ago where the Rams were in Seattle and had a big 14-point lead late in the fourth quarter, and Rashid Shaheed was able to have a big punt return, get them back in the game. The week before that, the Colts were beating them.
Talk about the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, and there's
crazy stuff
so many
happened,
different ways that Seattle has found ways to win games. Phillip Rivers' first game, they had to get 6 field goals out of Jason Myers to win 18-16 at home against the Colts. So it's been different ways that Seattle, it hasn't been all on the offense. You talked about Jackson Smith-Njigba, Charbonnet, Walker, Darno. It's not consistent. Sometimes it's the running game that's fantastic. Sometimes it's Smith-Njigba that has the big game. Sometimes it's the special teams that's making the play. Sometimes it's Jason Myers just kicking 6 field goals. So they do it in a lot of different ways. But the one thing that's been consistent about Seattle has been the defense. The defense shows up time and time again. They've been able to put up the big games, and they're going to have one of their best games here because this Niners offense is really clicking. Probably the hottest offense in the league is in San Francisco.
I think there's a lot of pressure on Darnold, though, because of the way he kind of finished last year, and that Minnesota was basically like, you can just go ahead and go. And he gets the big contract from Seattle. They made the right decision because Geno Smith really struggled with the Raiders this year. But I think there's a lot of pressure on him to show that he can win this game, because if you're the number 1 seed, and we know the 12th man in Seattle makes it really tough. The weather there, the way they play defense, really tough for any team to go into Seattle. But if you lose this game, you're a wild card team, and that huge home field advantage that Seattle would have now goes away. You have to win every playoff game on the road. This is a huge game Saturday night for both these teams.
Yeah, you talk about the implications for both these teams. Obviously, the win here, you're the number 1 seed. You have the bye. For San Francisco, it also means you're potentially playing the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you never live
at home. But the bad thing is the loser here, a San Francisco win, I believe, drops Seattle all the way down to the 5 seed.
Right.
And if Seattle wins, San Francisco would drop to the 6 seed. Or actually, they go to the 5 seed, and it would give the Rams absolutely no reason to potentially play their game against Carolina. So some implications there, some correlated parlays that may be available.
And the team that might be waiting for one of these 2 teams is the Philadelphia Eagles.
A loss here, and you potentially have to go to Philadelphia for a game there. But one of the other things, you talk about the San Francisco Niner team, you talk about what Sam Darnold has to do in this game. Obviously, I think they want to run the ball with Walker. He seems to run in between the 20s, and then when we get to the 20s, we see Charbonnet able to pound it in. But the lack of the San Francisco defense, not a big pass rush without having Warner, might give Darno that little bit of time that he needs to have a little bit more comfortableness back there, not get that pressure. We've seen him have his bad games in the game specifically against the Rams and some other teams where he gets that pressure on him and then he throws those bad interceptions. San Francisco has proven that they haven't been able to get a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and if you allow Smith-Njigba to kind of run free in that secondary, that's not a good sign. That's not something that you want to see. I'm afraid that we're going to see one of these 40-41 games here, just like we kind of saw last week against the Bears.
Chicago,
I think the one thing that we will see a little bit more is the Bears were much more willing to throw the football around the field. I think Seattle knows that they don't want to give the ball back to Brock Purdy and how hot he's been. So I think we're going to see a lot of Kenneth Walker, a lot of Charbonnet, not let this game be on Darnold's shoulders, but run the football from the Seattle Seahawks.
To me, the key is the Seattle defense. You looked at Chicago and San Francisco, and they both have, that's their Achilles heel. Right now, it's defense. That's not Seattle's Achilles heel. They get after the quarterback. They create a lot of turnovers. I think the Seattle defense is really good. If if I'm San Francisco, you have to find a way to keep this game close, I think. You can't let that Seattle offense get rolling because I think they have a huge advantage defensively. And for me, that's the only reason that Seattle's a road favorite is because they're the better team defensively. I'm going to give you...
Well, one thing I think specifically to look for in this game is Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. I think if you go back and look at that first matchup in week 1, Christian McCaffrey had 9 receptions out of the backfield. So if you're a CMC fan or looking at his props, he's been doing a great job in the rushing game the last several weeks, but look for him in the passing game this week.
So we talked about Seattle being on the road in Santa Clara against the 49ers. Here's some interesting stats, Jay. Seattle 2-6 against the number. Their last 8 games against San Francisco, 1-7 straight up in their last 8 games straight up against San Francisco. So they've really had some struggles against the Niners. This is going to be a chance for them to exercise some demons, win on the road in Santa Clara, and be the number 1 seed in the NFC. Another game, which is Sunday now, which is a huge game, Sunday night. And man, these two teams, they win ugly. They play games that are decided by 3 points or less. And it's the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, this Steeler team was in a great spot last week playing the Cleveland Browns and lost. Great outcome for our side of the counter, but what did it do? It opened the door for the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson to have a chance in Pittsburgh, Week 18, to win the ugly AFC North. These two teams played earlier in the season. Pittsburgh was able to steal a game in Baltimore. They played last year in the wild card round where Baltimore won that game. No DK Metcalf. If Watt's back, he's not going to be 100%, but it's in Pittsburgh. It's Mike Tomlin, yet they find themselves a 3.5-point dog to the Baltimore Ravens, and I do believe you're going to see Lamar Jackson play in this game. That's why the number is 3.5. But an interesting stat, the Ravens have 2 wins this year against teams with a better than 500 record. That's the Bears and the Packers. You know who was the quarterback in those 2 games? Not Lamar Jackson, but Snoop Huntley.
Well, Lamar Jackson coming back's got to give him all the confidence in the world, but Derrick Henry and the fact that we saw the Derrick Henry that we've come to known to trust and give him the football. I think it was like 36 carries for 215 yards and 4 touchdowns. So congratulations, he led you to your fantasy champion.
Sure did, yeah.
He led most teams to their fantasy championship. But that's what the Baltimore Ravens have been known to do. And when we started this season, it was the Ravens expected to win this division with the Bengals second, the Steelers third, and Cleveland to pull up the rear. So this was a really surprising season developments for Rodgers to be able to lead this team to potentially a division championship. And that's what we have here in this setup. But I go back to that, I want to say it was 4 weeks ago, when the Steelers walked into Baltimore and won 27-22. And that was the game where we did have the controversy of Isaiah Likely. They did have Metcalf,
though, in that game. Yeah.
Isaiah Likely caught the ball at the end of that game, what appeared to be the game-winning touchdown. It was knocked out after like 1 or 2 steps in the end zone. They said he did not complete the process of the catch, no touchdown. But in that game, Rodgers was 23 for 34 for 284 yards. His number 1 passing game of the season was at Baltimore with 284 yards. And DK Metcalf had 148, 7 receptions for 148 of those 284 passing yards. DK Metcalf is not playing in this football game. They're going to need to depend on Gainwell and Warren in this game, and it's going to have to be out of the backfield because Kenneth Gainwell rushed for 15 yards against the Ravens, and Jaylen Warren rushed for 13 yards against the Ravens in that game. So that game was on the shoulders of Rodgers. We know that this passing game is a short passing game. Even with Metcalf, it tends to be a shorter passing game. Now it's going to be really reliant on those tight ends and Smith and Gainwell and Warren out of the backfield. And I feel like if you give the Ravens that short window of knowing what they have to cover and not the downfield, and we get Derrick Henry that we got to see last week, man. I mean, if the Ravens don't give the ball to Henry 26 to 28 times in this game, I'll be absolutely shocked. But this is just, this is the AFC North
right. It's
war.
Great.
I mean, this is
so many games
is
are decided by 4 points or less when these two teams play, and I know it sounds strange, but there's a real chance the Ravens are on the couch and they don't make the postseason. What if they make the postseason and win the North? They host a playoff game. wouldn't stun me to see them win a couple of playoff games and really be in a position to maybe play in February, as crazy as it sounds, because the AFC is wide open right now. You've got so many young teams, as you alluded to, the Patriots, the Jags, the Broncos. I like this Bills team a lot, but I'm not sure on the health of Josh Allen. There might be more of a serious foot injury there, and they're going to have to win on the road as well. I think this AFC is completely wide open at this point, and if Baltimore happens to win this game, I think they're a little bit of a scary team for a lot of those teams.
I think you said it. The AFC is wide open, and I think we're talking about tally teams 1 through 5. Maybe you can even go into that 6 that can take home this AFC championship. Talked about the surprise of the Patriots, the surprise of the Broncos. They're going to be our number 1 and our number 2 seeds. I think they're very beatable number 1 and number 2 seeds. So again, just getting yourself in, and we'll see what can happen on that AFC side. And the NFC side, again,
Just interrupt you 1 sec. Think about that. Patriots and Broncos 1 and 2 in the AFC, and you may be looking at Seahawks and Bears 1 and 2 in the NFC. I don't think anybody had any 4 of those teams penciled in at 1 and 2 in their conferences at all before the season started.
Yeah, and when you look at the NFC, again, I'll go back to Rams, Niners, Seahawks. Again, a little bit of the gift of the schedule. Cardinals being way down, some nice scheduling here. So all those teams see themselves with great records. But I still think that we're talking about the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. They're probably not going to play any of their guys this week against the Commanders, but I still think that they're the team to beat. Obviously, we have the Rams sitting as the favorite for the Super Bowl, but until anybody knocks off that Philadelphia Eagles team, I think the Eagles are the team to beat. Again, a great win by them. Actually, not a great win by them last week, but they were able to go into Buffalo, and they played a really, really good first half of football, got a 13-0 lead, and then they essentially took the second half off and only allowed the Bills to chase down 12 points. But again, we've seen this all year long from the Eagles, just failing to find consistency and just waiting for at some point in time for the Eagles to put everything together. But they have a great defense, and obviously Saquon Barkley and Hurts and the receivers and the tight ends. I still think the Eagles are a team that somebody's got to knock them off until they're not my NFC favorite.
I agree with you on the Rams. I know we have them as the favorite, and I thought all year they were the best team. But being in that wild card spot and having to win every game on the road, we saw last year their struggles in the postseason when they had to go to a cold weather city. And they may have to go to Philly. They may have to go to Chicago. They may have to play in a cold weather game, and opposed to playing at home in that dome, in the carpet, just kind of a different animal.
I don't feel the Rams have to be at home just because of the veteran
They're
leadership.
A veteran team,
Their veteran leadership there. Obviously, Matthew Stafford has played all over. Obviously, he played most of his career in a dome in Detroit. Now
I think you'd postseason, you want to be at home.
Yeah,
you want to sleep in your own bed. You want to have your
if Devontae Adams comes back healthy, Puka Nacua healthy, Kyron Williams, the development of Corum, the development of the tight ends there. The Rams do have all the pieces of the puzzle, and that's why they kind of sit as that favorite to win the Super Bowl now.
Really quick, getting back to that Pittsburgh-Baltimore game, some interesting betting trends. Baltimore just 2-5 against the number their last 7 games against Pittsburgh, and 3-9 straight up their last 12 games against Pittsburgh. So just something to think about. Steelers 5-2 against the number their last 7 games at home. And Baltimore and Pittsburgh, when they've played each other the last 5 games, they've gone under 5 straight games. So these two teams know each other well. They play a lot of close games. Defense is supreme. Weather's a factor. I do think Lamar is going to play, and I think that number is 3.5 because of that. But if he doesn't, I think that number would come down a bit.
Yeah, and again, a lot of other games on the board. We're not going into it just because it's Week 18. But again, still a big game for the Bears against the Lions. Obviously want to win that division. But one of the things that I called out at the beginning of the year, Caleb Williams, Chicago Bears, the Chicago Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. Caleb Williams, 270 yards away from going to 4,000 yards for the Bears. So again, a big milestone there for the Bears, a big milestone for Caleb Williams. Something to look for there. And not only when we talk about Caleb Williams getting 270, when we talk about these players that have incentives, so many contracts that are incentive-laden for guys to get receptions or yardage or sacks. And so check out the prop menu. We've got a lot of these props up that are not – listen, we know what they need for the incentives. We're not setting the props necessarily at the incentive number, but vastly aware of what's going on in some of these games and what guys need to make a little cheddar on top of their incentives. So check out the props. We're going to have the menu of props here in Week 18. enjoy the games, have some fun, study hard, get ready for the playoffs.
How many sacks is Myles Garrett away from the record?
Well, he just one sack away from that record. We'll see if he can pull it down. Hopefully he can get 2 and not tie the record and actually take it home all by himself.
So again, you guys, it's been a phenomenal year. We really appreciate you guys playing in SDN Sports and watching our podcast and having some fun. It's a great time to come out, enjoy all the games over this weekend. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, be safe. And for Jason and myself and John and our entire staff here at Red Rock and Station Casinos Racing Sports Books, again, Happy New Year, guys. We'll see you guys next year.